So recently I decided to watch the Fox X-Men films for nostalgia reasons, but I enjoyed them growing up, and on rewatch I enjoyed them just as much. But the timelines are confusing
Huh?
because there are recasts,
Huh?
there are retcons,
Huh?
and multiple timelines.
Huh?
So I decided I'm going to make a video trying my best to explain the order of the films and what I see as the definitive X-Men Fox timelines. I'm going to start by explaining the first timeline, and then I'm going to move on to the second timeline, saying the movie and the year it takes place, and then after that I'll move on to Deadpool and Wolverine and Logan and the endings of Days of Future Past, and explain how they are connected to the other X-Men films. We start off with X-Men First Class, which takes place in 1962. After that, we have Days of Future Past before the timeline is changed, so where Mystique does kill Trask, which takes place in 1973. After that, we have X-Men Origins Wolverine, which takes place in 1979. 20 years later, we have the events of the first three X-Men, X1, X2, and X3 The Last Stand, which takes place from 2000 to 2006. Almost another 10 years later, we have The Wolverine, which takes place in 2013. Now 10 years after that, we have Days of Future Past again, where they are fighting the Sentinels in the future. So the way Days of Future Past connects to the new timeline is that in the events of Days of Future Past, Charles sends Logan back in time to 1972 to stop Mystique from killing Trask, and he successfully does so. She doesn't kill him, and the humans then gain more trust in the mutants. Now in this timeline, we have X-Men First Class, which still takes place the exact same in 1962. And then in 1973, we have Days of Future Past, the events you see in the movie where Mystique does not kill Trask. 10 years after that, we have X-Men Apocalypse, where Charles has now started the School for the Gifted. And about another 10 years after that, we have the events of X-Men Dark Phoenix, where Jean gets the powers of the Phoenix. And now 30 years later, we're back at Days of Future Past, the ending of Days of Future Past, where Logan wakes up in the future and he sees Bobby, Jean, Cyclops, Beast. Everything's back to normal and everyone's fine. And I believe that that is part of the second timeline, where Jean does come back after Dark Phoenix. Also, I should mention that in between Dark Phoenix and Days of Future Past in the new timeline takes place the first two Deadpool movies. Now, only 6 years after the ending of Days of Future Past, we have the events of Logan, which takes place in 2029. Now, this is where it gets a little bit confusing. We're on Deadpool and Wolverine. So, Deadpool and Wolverine takes place about 2023 to 2024. But this is at the start of the movie where, you just see Deadpool. He goes to find a Logan to stop his world from being destroyed. So the events of that movie play out. He takes that Logan back to 2023 or 2024 at the end of the film, which now means there are two Logans in that universe at the same time. But that does also imply that because he's changed the future, a new timeline would have branched out from that. So it's now a third timeline, which is just after the events of Deadpool and Wolverine, but you probably won't see anything about that because the characters from that film will just be brought into the MCU. That is the definitive timeline in how I see it. Hopefully this helps you if you've watched the films and you're confused on the timeline, or if you haven't watched them and come back to this video and then you'll understand it a bit more. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.